I'm pretty sure that you've never heard about at least 3 of these 5. Stay tuned to find out. Welcome, dear bookworm. This is Vasil, the Backwater Librarian, the booktuber who helps you discover obscure books worth your time. As the year draws to a close, I've decided to make a rather unscripted video and spontaneously share with you my thoughts on 5 obscure but worthy books which I have read this past year. All of the books featured on this list would be obscure to an English-speaking audience. I should mention that there are a couple of books which are actually pretty known within the limited geographies from which they come, but would be probably totally unknown to someone from the English-speaking world. I can assure you that while these 5 books might vary in genre or tone among them, each and every one of them is worth your time, and there are absolutely 0 trashy books on this list. I will present these books in no particular order, and I will also not spoil the plot for you, so feel free to stay till the end. In case you find my accent too thick, I have a full English transcript available, and I might add a couple of translations later on. By the way, if you happen to come across this video at a later date, I might have reviewed some of these books by then, and in that case you would find a link to those reviews in one of the upper corners of this video. Let's dive directly into deep waters, shall we? At number 1 we have William Hope Hodgson's The Nightland. This is a sci-fi / horror / weird fiction novel, first published in 1912. It has a highly unusual plot, so try to bear with me, okay? It starts innocently enough in 17th century Kent. An unnamed English gentleman, who is also our first person narrator by the way, falls in love with the girl next door. She seems to have affection for him as well, but you know how ladies can be at times. She hides it, doesn't want to show her affection. He grows desperate. In the process of courting her, he happens to save her life a couple of times, as strange as that may seem. Once from a roving band of vagabonds, he beats them to the ground and saves her. The other times she is out on a fake date, let's put it that way, with a different guy in order to make our narrator jealous, but that other guy unfortunately tries to do the R word to her. Our narrator, our hero, let's put it that way, jumps in, beats him up and saves her. Then lastly, she confesses to him that she has loved him this entire time, but just happened to play some little love games with him and wanted to test if he has true love for her. Understandably, our narrator is over the moon with joy. They get married and have a child, but at this point tragedy strikes. At birth, the girl, called the beautiful Lady Mirdath, a very strange name, she has some complications at birth and unfortunately doesn't survive. Our narrator is understandably plunged in the depths of sorrow, utterly depressed. One day he simply goes to sleep, and then by a very strange and for us inexplicable method of, let's say, metempsychosis, is transported untold of millions of years forward into the future and wakes up there in the body of a young man. It was an 18-year-old boy, if I remember correctly. He possesses both the memories of himself in 17th century Kent and those of this young adult living in this utterly bizarre future. So this is where the story really kicks off. Humanity is unfortunately on the back foot. After progressing for untold millions of years, the Earth has slowly become inhospitable due to purely natural causes, but also somewhere along the way, humans have meddled with forbidden sciences and unfortunately have opened some sort of portal into forbidden realms from which evil powers have seeped into the world and have been able to corrupt the world and lay a siege of what remains of humanity. So the last millions of remaining humans have huddled together in a very strange arcology, an enormous metal pyramid higher than Mount Everest, which they call the Last Redoubt. And this really is, or at least seems to be, the only place on planet Earth where humans can be safe from both the physical and spiritual powers of evil which rule all around them. The mostly barren land around the redoubt and throughout the entire Earth they call the Nightland, and very rarely do people venture out of the pyramid in order to explore this treacherous Nightland. The catalyst for the further plot comes when our narrator receives a psychic message. It is from a young girl somewhere out in the darkness of the Nightland. In the course of these strange psychic messages back and forth, our narrator realizes that the girl he is corresponding to, called Naani, is actually a reincarnation of his long-lost love, Lady Mirdath. Moreover, it becomes clear that she is safe, at least for the time being, in another smaller redoubt, which has been lost to memory to the inhabitants of the larger so-called Last Redoubt. So this other redoubt is somewhere to the north of the Last Redoubt, at an unknown location and at an unknown distance. It happens so that this lesser redoubt, as it is called, comes under attack by evil forces from outside and is about to fall to them. This, of course, deeply distresses our narrator, and he is left with a choice. Should he stay put where he is in the safety of the Last Redoubt, or should he venture forth into the Nightland and try to save Naani, the reincarnation of his long-lost Lady Mirdath? I won't reveal any more of the plot and will let you read this marvelous book for yourself. Besides this unconventional and at times even crazy sounding plot, I would say that also the delivery of this plot is very important, and it is absolutely uniquely done in this book. The narration is, as I mentioned, in the first person, but also there is absolutely zero dialogue. All of it is, as we would say, exposition. This does make for a rather monotonous reading at times, but on the other hand, it really puts you in the shoes of the narrator, and it gives you this claustrophobic feeling, as if you are literally living out his life and living out his struggles. The language is also quasi-archaic language. It tries to capture the spirit of the written English language from the 17th century, and also our narrator tends to have a 17th century worldview. So instead of, let's say, Victorian, Edwardian scientific delivery in the vein of The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, I'm not trying to throw any slack on it, I'm just making a comparison. So instead of that sort of scientific language, here we have an archaic or quasi-archaic language which tends to turn in prose poem. So it is a very poetic language. All of these elements make this book into a unique reading experience. It is unlike anything I've ever read before, and I don't think I would encounter something similar. So in that regard, it is really a unique book worth reading. Yes, it is not a book for the faint-hearted. It is a pretty dark book, but it is a delightfully dark book at that. Once you get into it, and once you get over the, let's say, learning curve of the unusual language and structure, you really start to live within the Nightland in the shoes of the narrator. It is a great book, and it absolutely does deserve its own dedicated video, its own dedicated review, and I will create one sooner or later. Next up, the only book on this list I don't own a physical copy of, Algernon Blackwood's The Wolves of God. This collection of 15 weird short stories was first published in 1921, to the best of my knowledge. Although the stories are varied in tone or setting, the main themes, as usual with Blackwood, are the inexplicable strange powers of nature, strange coincidences, and so forth. I found the eponymous story The Wolves of God to be quite weak, to be honest. Many of the other stories I found more enjoyable. My absolute favorite two of this collection are The Valley of the Beasts. Beasts as in rather wild animals and not as in monsters. It is a strange story about the power of nature and the precarious position of man within it. At the center of the story is a temperamental English hunter who strays too far away in the Canadian backwoods and stumbles upon what the local natives call the Valley of the Beasts. It is sort of a sacred part of the forest where one is not allowed to hunt, and even if man ventures out into it, strange things are bound to happen. So what transpires is that this hunter of ours starts having some very strange relationship to Mother Nature and to the wild animals while being within this valley, so much so that he starts becoming like an animal, let's say, and starts losing his human faculties. Will he slip back into animalism, or will there be someone to save his human soul? I'll let you find out. This collection also contains what is most probably the most Lovecraftian of all of Blackwood's stories, The Man Who Found Out. It involves utterly ancient cuneiform tablets which have yet to be deciphered. There is this one professor who is trying to decipher them. At the end of the story, he does succeed in deciphering them, but then what he finds out is not very cheerful, to say the least. I haven't actually spoiled it for you because the author never actually explains in detail what are the contents of these tablets. They are only vague hints and vague explanations, but never a full explanation is given, and this is actually the strength of this story. The reader is left to his own devices to piece together what this strange and unpleasant revelation may be. In conclusion, I found this to be a very enjoyable, weird story collection, and it does prove that Blackwood is about more than just The Willows or Wendigo, his two most prominent stories. He is a multifaceted author who was also very prolific. So this is one of his not that well-known books, and I gladly recommend it to you. Smack dab in the middle, at number 3, we have Time of Parting by Bulgarian author Anton Donchev. Time of Parting is a historical novel written in 1964. It was written by Anton Donchev, whom we sadly lost just this last year. The plot takes us back to the year of 1668. The Ottoman Empire is locked in a bitter siege of the city of Candia, modern-day Heraklion on the island of Crete. It is a Venetian-held fortified city which has been a thorn in the eye of the Ottoman Empire, and after decades-long siege, they are in the final stages of the siege, and they are very near to conquering it. The Ottomans, however, get fearful that the Venetians might mix up their strategy and that they might disembark on the northern Aegean coast, then venture up into the Rhodope Mountains, link up with the local Bulgarians there, and then, let's say, pose a threat to the Ottoman centers of power, namely Edirne and maybe even Istanbul itself. In order to prevent such a calamity, the Sultan, or rather the Grand Vizier, the notorious Ahmed Kupruli, concocts a series of special expeditions, so as to say, which consist of Ottoman noblemen, Islamic priests, so Islamic clergy, foot soldiers, etc. Their mission would be to penetrate different regions of the vast Rhodope Mountains and Islamify, if not even outright Turkify, the indigenous Bulgarian population. The idea being that in doing so they would prevent any future rebellion. The novel follows the events of one of these special expeditions sent right into the heart of the mountain. The locals, understandably, do resist, and as tensions escalate and events turn violent, the author unfolds in front of our eyes a darkly epic tale of what it means to keep your identity, to preserve your identity, but even more, what it means to be a good human in this world and not let evil overtake you and not let evil live within you and act through you, not to be a conduit for evil. The story is much more nuanced and intricate than what my short summary may suggest. And although there is clearly, let's say, an attacking side and a defending side, things are not put in black and white terms. I have a similar observation here as I have about the Nightland. In this case also, the delivery is very important, the delivery of the plot. It is actually what gives this novel really a soul, a life of its own. Again, we have a first-person narrator, but here, interestingly, we have two narrators who appear in subsequent chapters. Yes, there are times where one of the narrators may have 2 or 3 chapters at a time and then the other one, etc. But more or less the story is balanced between these 2 narrators. One of them is Abdullah, or simply known as the Venetian. He is actually a French nobleman who fought on the side of the Venetians in the siege of Candia and was unfortunately captured by the Ottomans. Then, given the choice to accept Islam or, I don't know, maybe live as a slave or even get executed, he chose the former, i.e. to accept Islam, therefore his Muslim name of Abdullah. He gives us the Ottoman point of view, but his narration is also one of the learned European of the time. So his narrating style is much more factual. He observes the events in a, let's say, more or less objective manner. And although he fights on the side of the Ottomans, he later on grows sympathetic towards the local Bulgarians. As a true learned European of the time, he compares the unfolding events to the ones in the Iliad of Homer, for example. This gives an interesting dynamic to his narration. He is learned in history and geography, so he gives a very interesting, a bit of an external, but a very interesting point of view of the story. The other narrator is the Orthodox priest, Ali Gorko. He is a local person, a man of the mountain, a man of the people. He is well acquainted with the local history, the local legends, the local folklore. So his narration is imbued with local folk songs, with constant callbacks to the medieval past and even to the ancient past of the region and of Bulgaria as a whole. He makes constant references to local myths and legends, and oftentimes the reader is puzzled and cannot discern where true narration and fact ends and where these fantastical and magical elements begin. This does make the priest Ali Gorko somewhat of an unreliable narrator. However, this also lends a type of magical, mystical quality to his narration, elevating the story into more than just sheer retelling of events, and I would say into a national Bulgarian epos. So similarly as with The Nightland, this is also my second read-through of Time of Parting, and I absolutely enjoyed it. This book is really unique, deep, poetic. It is not for the faint of heart, let's be clear. It does feature a lot of violence, not gory violence in the vein of Stephen King or some other authors, but the violence is there nonetheless, even if it is only implied. So, as I said, not for the faint of heart, however, very, very satisfying, very deep, poetic, and if you really want to peek into the Bulgarian folklore and legends and nationality, this is the book to read. This book does deserve a proper video review with all the bells and whistles. So it may take me some time, but I am definitely sure to do one. At number 4, another reread for me, another enjoyable one, it is Pirei by Petre M. Andreevski. This is a sort of a realist modernist novel, first published in 1980 by Macedonian author Petre M. Andreevski. By the way, I tend to read these books in original. I tend to read books in original as far as I can. it was the same with Time of Parting. But don't worry, in the description below you will find all needed, all related ISBNs or links wherever applicable to the English translations or even other translations of these books. Interestingly enough, similar to Time of Parting, here we also have two narrators narrating their stories in subsequent chapters in first person. However, here we have the husband Ion and the wife Velika, who are a rural Macedonian family living around the years of the First World War. The plot centers around their struggle for survival when the husband Ion is forcefully conscripted into the Serbian army and the wife Velika is left to fend for herself and their 5 children. It's not only the raging war that poses a danger here, but also hunger, scarcity, long winters, bad conditions overall. This book is far from popular in the English-speaking world, however it is a bona fide classic from the geography from which it comes. There is a clear duality in the narration, in that the male narrating voice is pretty harsh, I would say, to the point, straightforward, sometimes not even shying away from foul language, while the female narrating voice is the one of the local housewife, again imbued with the local legends, even superstitions, rituals, folklore. This makes the book a sort of a treasure trove of Macedonian folklore, makes it for a challenging read, especially I would guess if you would read it in a translation. It makes it for a challenging but also rewarding and in the end enjoyable read. I plan to do a review for it as well. I'm ready with the script. It will be a scripted video unlike this one, but it may take me some time to realize it into a proper video review. Last but not least, we have this sweet little 2-novella collection by Ernst Hoffmann. Similarly to the mysterious characters in his stories, Ernst Hoffmann seems to lurk in the shadows just out of sight of our popular culture. He has written many interesting stories, some of which have in one form or another become widely known, but it seems that no one does remember that the originator of these stories was Ernst Hoffmann. Just to give you an example, did you know that Tchaikovsky's ballet, The Nutcracker, is actually based on Hoffmann's short story, The Nutcracker and the Mouse King? Leaving that aside for a moment, let's see what we have in this particular collection. We have 2 novella or novelette length stories. The first one is The Sandman, first published in 1817, if I remember it correctly, and the second one is called Mademoiselle des Scudéries, published in 1820. The first one, The Sandman, is a, I would say, psychological horror story. Our main character, Nathaniel, is a young student who does have a traumatic childhood memories. As a child, his grandmother or his aunt, I don't recall it correctly, instilled in him tense fear of this made-up character, the Sandman, a kind of a boogeyman of local German folklore. Coincidentally or not, the father of Nathaniel had some dealings with a rather shady character, the very unpleasant lawyer named Coppelius. So young Nathaniel somehow came to relate the unpleasant character Coppelius with the Sandman of his childhood nightmares. One fateful night, his father died in suspicious circumstances while working on some sort of project with the lawyer Coppelius, after which Coppelius simply vanished, maybe in fear of being persecuted by the authorities, and was never heard of again. Years later, Nathaniel, now a grown-up man, is engaged in his studies and has a stable relationship with a young girl named Clara. However, then another mysterious character appears, a certain Giuseppe Coppola, who may or may not be a doppelganger of the lawyer Coppelius. From that point on, Nathaniel's life is turned upside down and the story takes a rather grim and macabre turn. It's a story of identity, doppelgangers, perception, and fear. I gave you a rather vague outline, but you have to read it for yourself. It's not a clear-cut story, but as I said, it's a psychological horror story with very subtle nuances and very subtle and not well-defined turns and twists within its plot. It would be a great read for all of you horror aficionados out there. The second novella, Mademoiselle de Scudéry, is a historical thriller novelette. It centers around the eponymous character of Mademoiselle de Scudéry, an elderly aristocratic woman in 17th century Paris. There are also many plot twists, action, mystery, and detective work in the vein of Sherlock Holmes. So it's a thrilling and engaging read start to finish. That's it for today, guys. I would definitely love to hear from you in the comments. Have you read any of these stories and how do you find them? Also, I would like to hear how do you find my commentary on it. What would you say? Should I prioritize some of these books for a video review? Or would you like me to read or review something else? Also, if you have read some interesting books which you would like to share with me or recommend me, I would be happy to hear it in the comments below. Also, if you liked this video, my reading taste and my style of presentation, I would absolutely love if you could drop a like and subscribe to my channel. Help me grow and stay on YouTube. And remember, the Backwater Librarian guides you through the obscure pathways of literature. Thank you for watching and pleasant reading.